Imagine a world where your most basic human rights, the right to clean air, safe water, enough food, and even life itself, hang precariously in the balance. This isn't a dystopian novel. It's the stark reality unfolding for millions facing the escalating impacts of climate change. For years, environmental advocacy and human rights have largely operated in separate spheres, but a powerful shift is underway. Now, the international community increasingly views the climate crisis not just as an environmental challenge, but as a profound human rights issue. The connection began to solidify in the early 21st century. In 2007, the Malé Declaration was the first international agreement to explicitly state that global warming has immediate implications for human rights. Soon after, the UN Human Rights Council adopted resolutions acknowledging climate change as a direct threat to the full enjoyment of these fundamental rights. A detailed study by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights then identified specific populations like displaced persons, indigenous communities, women, and children as particularly vulnerable, laying bare the human cost. Consider the direct impacts. Rising sea levels threaten to inundate low-lying islands, displacing entire communities and forcing them from ancestral lands. Extreme weather events, intensified by warming temperatures, bring devastating floods, heat waves, and droughts, leading to injury, death, and widespread food insecurity. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change projects significant decreases in crop productivity in vulnerable regions and warns of increased deaths from heat waves. Access to clean, safe water diminishes as climate patterns shift, exacerbating health disparities between the wealthy and the poor. These aren't distant scenarios, they are current realities for millions. This alarming reality pushed the UN toward a groundbreaking step. In 2021, the UN Human Rights Council adopted a landmark resolution, formally recognizing the human right to a safe, clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. This was a first for the body. The following year, the UN General Assembly reinforced this by adopting a similar resolution. While these resolutions are not legally binding treaties, they carry immense moral and political weight. They serve as a powerful signal, establishing a new global consensus that healthy ecosystems are essential for human well-being, providing a foundation for future policy and legal challenges worldwide. At the heart of the global effort to combat climate change lies the Paris Agreement, signed in 2016. This international treaty sets ambitious goals to hold the global average temperature increase to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels and to pursue efforts to limit it to 1.5 degrees. It also calls for global greenhouse gas emissions to reach net zero by the middle of the 21st century. Unlike previous climate accords, the Paris Agreement adopted a bottom-up structure, placing the responsibility on each nation to set its own climate targets. These country-specific climate plans are known as Nationally Determined Contributions, or NDCs. Every 5 years, each nation commits to new NDCs, with the expectation that each successive pledge will be more ambitious than the last. This principle, known as progression, aims to continually ratchet up global climate action. Here's the critical distinction. While the process of preparing, communicating, and maintaining these NDCs is legally mandated under international law, the targets themselves are voluntary. No external mechanism exists to force a country to set specific emissions targets or to meet them. To ensure accountability and foster greater ambition, the Paris Agreement established the Global Stocktake. This mechanism, occurring every 5 years, assesses the collective progress toward the agreement's long-term goals. The first such evaluation happened in 2023, providing critical input for nations as they prepare their next round of NDCs. The goal is to create a constant cycle of review and improvement, encouraging countries to continuously raise their climate ambition, even without a direct enforcement mechanism for individual targets. The agreement also provides a framework for economic cooperation through Article 6, hinting at the potential for a global carbon market. This allows countries to cooperatively pursue emissions reductions, enabling the international transfer of mitigation outcomes. It means one country could fund emissions reductions in another, counting those toward its own NDC. This approach, while complex, encourages efficiency and broader participation, but it also demands meticulous accounting to prevent double counting and ensure genuine emissions cuts. Beyond simply cutting emissions, the Paris Agreement also emphasizes adapting to the unavoidable impacts of climate change and addressing what is termed loss and damage. This recognizes that some climate impacts are so severe they cannot be adapted to, particularly for vulnerable nations. While the agreement establishes frameworks for reporting on adaptation efforts and addressing loss and damage, it explicitly states these provisions cannot be used as a basis for liability. This point is heavily debated by vulnerable island nations seeking redress. Despite the voluntary nature of NDC targets, the Paris Agreement has become a potent tool in climate litigation around the world. In the Netherlands, a landmark case forced the government to strengthen its emissions reduction targets, citing human rights obligations and the 2 degrees Celsius goal of the Paris Agreement. In another significant ruling, the Royal Dutch Shell Oil Company was ordered by a court to drastically cut its global emissions, marking a direct application of the agreement's principles against a major corporation. These cases illustrate the powerful ripple effect of international commitments on national legal systems. The human rights dimension continues to gain legal traction. In 2022, Brazil's Supreme Federal Court recognized the Paris Agreement as a human rights treaty, ruling that its provisions should supersede national law in certain contexts. Simultaneously, the UN Human Rights Council reinforced the link between stopping climate change and fundamental rights, like the right to food. This growing body of legal precedent transforms seemingly non-binding international pledges into compelling human rights obligations within national jurisdictions. So can a human rights vote at the UN really force nations to ditch fossil fuels? Directly, no. The UN Human Rights Council's resolutions, while morally powerful, are not binding treaties with enforcement clauses. They cannot compel nations to dismantle their energy infrastructure. The Paris Agreement's NDCs are self-determined, not imposed. However, the indirect pressure is immense and growing. The convergence of human rights and climate law creates a potent force. It empowers citizens, NGOs, and national courts to hold governments and corporations accountable. It leverages international commitments to demand concrete action toward a fossil-free future. This shift makes the climate crisis an undeniable human rights imperative, driving change through legal and moral pressure, even without a direct international force function.